Hey, you found the Sales Hunter podcast. I'm Mark Hunter. And every episode we get to bring in a great friend, a great guest. Today it's Victor Antonio. Victor Antonio, if you don't know who he is, you've been living in a cave. We're going to be talking about upsell. We're going to be talking about a whole host of things. So why don't let's get the show rolling, okay?
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
Our topic today is mastering the upsell, and there's no better person to talk about that than the one and only Victor Antonio. Victor, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Mark, thank you for having me. Matt, by the way, that's a cool intro. Is that Meredith in the background? Is that her voice?
That would be voiceover by Meredith Elliott. See, I just have, when you do stuff with other people, you can get her.
Shout out to Meredith.
You know what?
Shout out to Meredith.
I got to have a female, right? I mean, you can't do it. Hey, Victor, I would love to have you. But you know what? Everybody says, got to kind of have that interaction there. So sorry.
That's great, man. I love it. Great intro, man. But thank you for having me on the show, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much. Let's dive right into it because you do some incredible work around mastering the upsell. And first of all, why don't you define what you mean by mastering the upsell? And then let's dive into it.
Mark, the origin of the book, Mastering the Upsell, came from I was doing an event, it was a workshop, and we talked about how do you grow your average deal size, right? And that just kind of hung in my head a little bit. And then I got home and I did a little research, like how many books on upselling have been written? And I think I found maybe one or two in the last 20 years. And I said, you know what, maybe this will be a great topic because again, when we talk about upselling, we're talking about, and by the way, when I say upselling, you can also do cross-selling in there. Let me define the two. If you get a single burger and then you say, would you like a double with that? We all go double. That's an upsell. It's more of a vertical sale. But if I say, would you also like fries with that? That's a cross sell. And so in the book, Mastering the Upsell, I talk about really how you do both.
I love that because again, you just defined right there, upsell and cross sell, because that is distinctly different. And so many times what happens is salespeople leave out that opportunity. They're just so thankful to get the order. And then they walk and they run away, So share with the audience, what are some very common strategies that you see people not doing that they should be doing?
Well, before I get into the strategies, almost like the what and the how, let me give you the big why and several big whys that you should do upselling. We talked about increasing the average deal size. There's a study that I highlighted in the book that says by simply focusing your strategy on upselling, you can increase your sales by up to 30%. So think about that. You can increase your sales by up to 30% selling to the very people you've already sold to or are closing a deal with. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is your client acquisition cost is almost zero. Because if you're going to go back and upsell them or cross-sell them, well, you already know them, so you don't have to acquire a new client. So that cost goes down. That's beautiful. Number three, because you know the client, because you've sold to the client, your sales cycle is almost nil. In other words, your sales velocity increases. So there's three big reasons why you want to incorporate that upselling into your sales strategy / process. The sad thing is when I ask people, Mark, and I'm sure you've probably found this also, if you've asked the same question about upselling, is that most companies don't have an upselling strategy. It's ad hoc, kind of wing it as you go type of thing. And so that's the big why on why you should do upselling. So customer acquisition cost, again, goes down. Sales velocity goes up, and average deal size can increase by, again, almost 30%. And as we look in towards next year, we hear the whisperings of the R word, recession. One way to insulate yourself from a recession is to really begin to focus in and sell to customers you already have.
I love what you're saying it because I go back years ago. I don't know if you ever did this, but I used to work at McDonald's. And this was before the value meal. And so we always had to, suggest fries, if they order a hamburger, suggest cheese. I mean, so as a 16-year-old, I was learning upsell and cross-sell even before you wrote the book. So thank you, Victor. I wonder how much more successful I would have been back then.
Probably maybe a little more, just up to 30% more. How's that? We'll use that same equation.
I love that. I love that. Hey,
I was going to answer your question about the different strategies. I mean, there's different things you can do in upselling. Some of my favorite strategies in the book are, and I talked about this at the Outbound conference we both spoke at, and that is offering options, right? If you offer 2 options, the brain tends to go for the cheapest one. If you offer 3 options, the brain goes for the one in the middle. And I always tell people you want to give people 3 options. And obviously, you put the one in the middle. The one in the middle is the one you want them to buy, because typically that's where you're going to kind of win and be more profitable. I remind people that McDonald's does this with 3 options. Starbucks does it, and the highest profit margin is the one in the middle, the grande in the Starbucks case. I also talk about that this upselling creates this increased customer lifetime value. And some people don't think about this. Because I'm selling more to my existing customers, that customer's lifetime value thus increases, which means if I'm in marketing, I can justify the dollars if I can increase the average lifetime value of a customer. But so pricing option is one. I also talked about, you remember this during the conference, I talked about using the decoy effect. When you get 3 options, if you move the one in the middle closer to the higher one, the brain automatically focuses on the top 2 and almost ignores the lower priced one. And this allows you to sell without selling or pushing people into trying to buy the more expensive product. You let the pricing structure in your options do the work.
I like that because they feel they're in control.
Correct.
I've always loved the idea that you put out the ultimate, you put out the ultimate package, and you kind of let them barf over it. Because then by the time you put out that one in the middle, suddenly, wow, that's so great. That's excellent. That's what they wanted to go with. And what I love about this whole strategy is if you only put one out, they're going to try to negotiate you down on that one.
Right.
So now I'm giving them options. Why do salespeople fail to do what they should be doing? Because like you've spelled out, it makes the cost of customer acquisition cheaper. It increases lifetime value. It increases the effectiveness of marketing spend. What's not to like? But why don't salespeople like it?
Functional blindness, I think the psychologists call it. Functional blindness is, you ever like look for your keys and you can't find them? And they're like right in front of you and somebody has to point it out to you. I think we have functional blindness when it comes to upselling. It's something we just don't consciously think about. Because think about this, Mark, before my book, came out in January, how many people were really focused in on the upsell? Like say, hey, this is a real strategy. Make it front and center of your selling process. Not many. I would argue even today, now was it 10 months later almost, people still are not thinking about upselling. But I think that the idea of upselling is going to grab hold to those who choose to grab it. But I think that functional blindness, not seeing the real value, which is why I started out with the why. Because if you understand why you should do it, why it will benefit you, why you can accelerate your sales, then you might want to do it. But if you think about it, what's happening now is really fascinating in the market. We both use Amazon, right? Now, Amazon is like the master of the upsell. People who bought this also bought that. They're using social proof, right? And they also give you different pricing options. I love the matrix where here's the product you're looking at, and then here's how it compares to other 3 products, right? So the AI, the artificial intelligence algorithm, does that for you. Now, keep in mind that we could do that. As individuals, we can kind of play the AI role and say, you know what, you're looking at this option. You might also want to consider this, or here's how it compares to C, D, and E. Put it forward. But as you've pointed out, Mark, salespeople are afraid sometimes to present options because they're afraid to lose the deal. And they believe that the only way to close a deal is to discount.
I'll tell you what, you called out the elephant in the room with that one. Because again, I think salespeople are afraid to get anywhere outside the dotted, outside the lane that they're playing in. And they just want to close the sale because to them, closing the sale is success.
Right.
It's not about optimizing the sale. And what I find so interesting, especially if you look at compensation programs, so many compensation programs, the only order you get commission on is that initial order. So why would you not try to upsell? Now, it's not about making the product so complicated to order. It's really making it very easy to order.
Right.
Because you've got the order and all you're doing is upselling it. It is. So we're getting some great comments. Mark Bregman knew you at Honeywell.
Mark Bregman. I don't
know if that name sounds familiar, but he's got a comment in there. He says, So hey, you better be
Right.
careful what you say, because
Yeah.
people are paying attention. So
Yeah.
it's good.
By the way, Mark, I want to highlight something. You said two important things, very important things. The first one you talked about was compensating the upsell, right? And I talk about that in the book, that if you don't compensate the upsell, why do salespeople want to upsell, right? There's a book that was written back in the 80s, probably when I knew Mark, that was called The Greatest Motivational Principle. And it's called GMP is the book, by the way. The greatest motivational principle is you incentivize those behaviors you want repeated. So if you're not compensating the upsell, you're just giving it on the first order. Salespeople are programmed to just sell that first order. The second thing you mentioned is it goes back to friction. Make it easy for them to upsell or easy to sell. And those two things go hand in hand. Compensate the upsell, make it easy to teach them how to upsell at the same time.
Yeah. I did know you in the 80s because you were the kid that came over and mowed our lawn when I was in diapers. Yeah.
Probably not, but okay.
Okay. Anyway, hey,
we didn't have, by the way, in Chicago, we didn't have lawns, is what I'm saying. So it was all concrete, so I wouldn't know how to mow a lawn.
The way I mow a lawn is I call the guy. Okay. I just call the guy. I don't even know who the guy is. I probably like your place, right?
The guy. No, I mow my own lawn. I just want to highlight that, actually.
Wow,
I can't.
I don't even own I haven't owned a lawnmower in years. So anyway. Okay. Back to our subject at hand. Let's talk a little bit more. What is the easiest strategy that you think? So I'm in the midst of a sales call. I get this order. I feels like it's there. Walk me through what should I be doing?
Well, one of the we talked about the 3 option strategy, right? And then using the decoy effect with that. I don't know if it's my my favorite strategy or my second, because I like the options and the decoy, but the second one is something called the endowment effect. And that is, if you don't like giving options because maybe that's not your business where you give options, maybe you have one pricing. And I use this example about a landscaper came over and actually did gave us a proposal. And what he did was give us one big proposal. And the way the endowment effect works is that once you take mental ownership of something, you have a hard time giving it up. And so here's how we did it in a nutshell. And again, I explain this in more detail in the book. But if I give you a proposal and I load that proposal up, this is key, Mark. You know this already. I like to load a proposal up. And as soon as the client says, that's more than I expected to pay, that's not within our budget. Right now, we don't have the funds for that. I simply just slide the proposal right back over and say, why don't you take out what you don't want? And then I'll go ahead and recalculate the price. Now, notice I let the customer do it, because I know that as the customer, the potential customer, is crossing things out, it's causing them brain pain, which means they'll cross out less items. The mistake a lot of salespeople make is I go, well, that's more than I expected to pay. The salesperson says, well, let me go back and rework the numbers. And then they come back and show them another number. Not still too high. Too high. Got to go lower, Victor. And they keep doing this. So the customer's not experiencing any pain. You are, as a salesperson, going back and forth, wasting all your time. If you simply slide it back, say, why don't you take out what you don't want, and then we'll go ahead and recalculate the price. That right there is a way of closing a deal without pressuring them. And as you said earlier, and well said, is that you give the customer, in this case, the prospect, the illusion of control and let them decide, and they don't feel like they've been pushed or pressed into the actual deal.
This is what's so key. What Victor just said, I want you to hit replay or back up 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Listen to again what he said, because there's a couple key pieces here. A, you allowed the customer to be in control. Now, for a lot of salespeople, that's scary because they're not confident. They're not confident.
Yeah.
You have to, in sales, be absolutely confident, because the more confident you are, then you're going to be able to sit there and have that conversation with them. And
so, hey, Mark, can I push the envelope on this one?
Sure.
I'm going to say yes, confidence. And I said, but let's go back to what the Challenger sale taught us and what the new book by Matt Dixon and Ted McKenna, Jolt Effect, is that you got to control the flow of the conversation. And their data shows that if you take control of the conversation, I'm not saying dominate the conversation, take control of the flow of the conversation, you'll close more deals. So yes, it's confidence, but it's confidence on steroids, is controlling the flow and not being afraid to do that.
And you know what's interesting is you're controlling the conversation, but the customer feels they own it.
Yeah.
And I like that, because now what happens is the customer is now making that decision, confidence.
Right.
And what does that mean? They're understanding the value proposition. Because at the end of the day, the customer has to understand the value proposition. I want to go back, and when we upsell and cross-sell, we increase the value proposition exponentially because the customer didn't realize it. Go back to the early days of the smartphone when Steve Jobs came out with the smartphone. And think about this for a moment. We didn't know we needed a camera. We didn't know we needed a music player. We didn't know we needed all that. We bought it because of the phone. And then as we began to realize, whoa, wait a minute, all this other stuff, it increased the value, the long-term value we receive.
It changed our perspective. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. By the way, do you remember that? Do you remember that Henry Ford example? If I listened to my customers, I would have gotten a bigger horse.
Yes.
Because what he was saying is, no, you don't need a horse. And he shows this horse on steroids, right? And what he was saying is, if I listen to my customers, they'll just help me give me a faster and healthier horse because that's what they're asking for, right? To move faster. I invented the automobile, something out of the box, something different they didn't expect.
Well, that's the same thing Steve Jobs did because they did no customer research going into it because otherwise he would have had this unbelievable flip phone.
Yeah.
And again, this is what great salespeople do. But Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, incredibly confident because they're taking the customer to a position, to a place that they didn't know.
Correct.
But how did they do that? By really getting the customer to buy into the conversation.
Right. And they're the subject matter experts. And again, this is one of the things that kills me is that, it's like, I was using this example when I was talking about somebody, this goes back to confidence and controlling the flow. And that, again, I didn't say dominate, control the flow. And that is, you're the subject matter expert. You have a bigger vision than the customer has. The customer's doing the day-to-day. You have the bigger vision of what's going on in the market, what other companies are doing. And you're trying to bring that expertise to that conversation. That's the value you provide. And I still have salespeople who are somewhat hesitant to provide guidance and say, hey, do it this way, do this, do that. And it's like brain surgery, right? Imagine a brain surgeon, telling you, here's what's wrong. And then say, Mark, got 3 options. I can come in from this side. I come in from this side. I come in from that side. What do you want? You'd be like, oh, I don't know. I don't have the MD here. I don't have the PhD. You want them to tell you. You want them to tell you. You're the salesperson. Guide them.
So now what does that do? Suddenly the customer believes in you even more and you believe in yourself more. You create a higher level of confidence. This isn't arrogance. This is confidence that you're competent to be able to deliver them the solution. Because again, how many times how many times do we see the sale breakdown in the last couple minutes because the salesperson really doesn't quite believe in what they're saying?
It was Brent Adamson had a great line. His guys over at Gartner.
Yes.
He said something. He goes, people don't have people don't have the confidence to make a decision. It's our job as salespeople to give them that confidence to make the decision. And he said it more eloquently than I just did. But the premise is the same, is that they want it. The customer doesn't have the confidence in their own decision-making process to make the decision, which is why they say, let me think about it. Let me get back to you maybe next quarter. So our job as salespeople, by controlling the conversation, making it clear, we give the customer the confidence to make that buying decision. So you can be confident. That's great. But you should really think about imbuing your customer with the confidence to actually make a decision and move forward.
Yeah. And you carry it all the way through the last minute. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a CEO. Everybody the company had bought into our proposal, our salespeople, everything was great. And it was a pricey deal. CEO called me up and he made the comment. He said, your fees are way too high. You need to cut them. And I responded, I said, only thing we can change is the value. How much business do you expect to lose from the new competitors coming into your marketplace next year?
Right.
And there was this long pause. Then he said, that was good. You're hired. Because, what was I doing?
I want to tell you the story. I had a guy ask me for a discount, right, to do sales training, right?
Yeah.
And he said, Victor, he says, is there any way you can discount your price? I go, no. I said, and I literally said, would you like me to tell you why? And he's like, okay, tell me why. I said, my job is to come in and show your people how not to discount. So me discounting would be a full contradiction, wouldn't it? Pause. All right, send me the contract.
Right. I mean, but see, you're coming back to what was the critical need that customer had. That customer you were talking to, they were having a problem because their salespeople were discounting.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when we understand the need, when we understand the need, it's amazing how much more upsell and cross sell that we can do with things. But again, it comes back to like you said, the challenge is control the conversation. And I mean, wow.
By the way, beyond the need, it's and I know just add the flavor to it. I know you know this already. It's really saying I can solve your problem. I can show you how to solve that damn problem you're having. That's why I'm here, and I have the confidence to know I can solve that problem. I can help you with that, and that's what customers need to feel. That there is something, Mark, you know this, that when you ask somebody a question and they hesitate even slightly, like yeah, that even that small hiccup, you're like, I don't know if I believe you. Right? And so that's why I'm a proponent of like role playing every objection you're going to get and every response you should have on the ready, because your response, it's not so much what you say, it's really how you say it that transmits to the customer, okay, I believe this person. I want to buy from him.
Oh, I love what you just said there. It's how you say it. It is. Because again, that's that confidence factor we create with our customers.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, do customers want, the higher the degree of confidence, the higher the degree of trust, the more the customer will pay. It's pretty simple. If they don't have confidence and trust in you, guess what? They want it for free, right?
Yep.
And if we expect, and I want to come back because we only got a couple of minutes left. Got to wrap this up here in terms of upselling and cross-selling, because the objective here, what we're talking about, is not to just get the sale, but to create more customer value by upselling and cross-selling. Now, I'm going to let you upsell and cross-sell you in just a moment. But before we do that, I got to ask you, what would you say are the two things that salespeople should be doing right now? They're listening to this podcast, they get done, and you, Victor Antonio, want them to do what?
If they want to learn how to cross-sell and upsell, download the book, right? Mastering the Upsell. $10, great investment. That's the first thing to do. The second is to really look at how you're presenting your product and pricing to your client. And again, once you read the book, you'll see that using options or using the endowment effect with one big proposal, really matters. And you begin to shape how you actually present your pricing to your customer. And if you understand how options work, or the one-off, so to speak, the loaded proposal, and you know what to say, just having those two things, in your arsenal in terms of being able to respond is all you'll need to close more deals. Again, a lot of salespeople, they work on the opening of the presentation. They work on the actual content of the presentation, the storyline, the narrative, and so forth and so on, creating value, unique selling proposition, blah, 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 blah. And then they come in. If you ever see a plane land when it's got a lot of crosswind, it gets real wobbly. I see a lot of these folks, they just can't land the plane. In this case, the pricing plane correctly because they get nervous. And that's when you don't want to be nervous, is at that moment. You want to land nicely. Say, what option A or option B for you? Is this what you want? You know what I mean? With that confidence, just land hard. As they used to say for my TV show, stick the landing, man. And I think a lot of salespeople need to stick the landing when it comes to a call to action at the end of a presentation.
Sales leaders, sales managers, if you're listening, that means you role play in your next sales meeting. Because again, you've got to make sure everybody on the team, everybody in the organization is comfortable sticking the landing. Hey, we've been talking with Victor Antonio. If people want to reach out to you, where do they get in touch with you?
VictorAntonio.com. That's it.
That is pretty easy. And of course, your book, Mastering the Upsell, they can get it off the website, right?
Off the website or on Amazon. Take your pick.
I love it. Hey, I want to say, Victor, thank you so much. You're a great friend. Always enjoy hanging out with you. I never know what's going to come out of your mouth. I always take away.
By the way, the feeling's mutual at all points.
Oh, yeah, right. Give me a break. Give me a break. Anyway, hey, you've been listening to the Sales Hunter podcast. Every week, we bring to you an episode with a guest sharing insights you can learn from immediately. This week's guest, Victor Antonio. Check out next week because you just never know who might that guest be. If you like the show, subscribe, rate, and review it. If you don't like it, hey, do it anyway because it's going to make my mom feel better about me. I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter. Thank you for listening to the Sales Hunter podcast. Great stuff.
It's going to make my mom feel better about me.